Hi everyone, and welcome to my channel and to this short time-lapse version of a tiny little landscape stroke pet portrait. I hope that you enjoy this. If you do, then please do subscribe here on YouTube. And also this full tutorial will be available on my Patreon channel too. This little piece is on pastel map paper, but just at the start there you saw my little line sketch that I did first on a separate piece of paper and then transferred that on to the pastel paper. So there's not much of an outline required for this one. It's mostly a small landscape. And then I've placed my own little dog Lola right in the center. So she's pretty tiny within this composition. This is only 8 by 10 inches big. And my aim here was more about capturing the mood and the feel of the day, what it's like to be out on a walk with this little perky white bum up ahead, always looking around, checking that I'm following. So that was the aim here, not necessarily to create a very detailed pet portrait, more to try and capture the whole scene and the feeling of that day and that time. So this was actually my demo for last year's Pastel Live event. And so this aired last August, my first time ever demoing for Pastel Live. And they have kindly let us release some of the material in the next year. So I am just releasing this one here now on YouTube as a time lapse. And then I'm delighted to be able to share this full length demo with my patrons over on Patreon because I really liked how this one turned out. And I'm so pleased to be able to share it with a few more people as well. And this little painting has ended up living permanently in my house on my wall. I've tried many small paintings, including Lola the Borreguero, trying to capture a sense of the place and the lighting. But I think that this one is my favorite. I think this one turned out the best because it really captures the lighting and the colors in this place. I was really trying to work partly from the photo reference, but also from my memory of being there and how the colors look so saturated when you're actually in the landscape. Because quite often when I take photographs, they don't come out as well as I remember the place looking because I'm not a very skilled photographer. So I like to use my photographs as guidance, gives me something to work off, but I'm also working a lot of the time from my memory of being there. So for the first good portion of this demo, I was just blocking in, working on the background mostly. I tend to work a little bit different these days when I'm working on landscapes. Before, I would have worked mostly from top to bottom on a painting, finished one area before moving on to the next. But what I'm really enjoying with the landscapes these days is to have a more overall approach. So trying to get more of the painting blocked in, to see more of the colours and how they're starting to relate to each other. So here I'm just coming back in with my sky blues. I can start to cut back into the trees. You can see I can start to add some of those sky holes where we can see through the branches to the sky beyond. And of course you can see my color codes popping up down to the left. Normally my time lapses don't show this, but a lot of my full-length tutorials over on Patreon do have these color codes popping up. It's not necessary to use exactly the same colors as I'm using when you're working along with me, But it is quite nice to at least know what colour I'm using, because sometimes with the dirt of my fingertips, as you can see here, sometimes the pastel stick looks an entirely different colour in my hand. And I know that that makes it a little bit confusing sometimes if you're trying to follow along and you really can't see, not necessarily the exact colour that I'm using, but you really can't see what type of colour I'm using at all, because sometimes they just get so muddied while I'm using them. So in a lot of my long tutorials, I put these extra colour codes in when I'm using the soft sticks, because they just often don't look like the colour they actually are on screen. And the idea is not necessarily that you get exactly the same colours as me to work along, but at least in seeing what colour I'm using nice and clearly, you can see if you've got something close to that within your own pastel range. Or if you realise that it's a colour you're really lacking, then you can use the colour code to order something like this for yourself. So a lot of my tutorials have these colour codes in. Like I said, it's not absolutely vital that you've got all the same colours as me. But I do like to talk about my colour choices a lot within the tutorials, and I like to discuss colour a lot because I feel like that's where the magic really lies in painting. You can be a little bit off with proportions, you can be a little bit off with a lot of things, but if your colours are good, it really ties the whole thing together. So in this short tutorial, because this demo is just an hour in length, and if you want to come and work along with me on this one in real time, I will make this available over on my Patreon channel. And as well as those colour codes popping up, of course, you'll view the whole thing in real time. And also join in on my narration as I work. So lots of chat about getting smaller marks from the big sticks. Lots of chat about colour choices and creating the sense of the warm light and the cool shadows that are cutting across the path. So lots to chat about in this little piece, and I hope that many of you will come and have a look at the full thing. I always find it interesting to create these smaller paintings. You get a lot done in quite a short amount of time, and I'm quite used to painting big, complicated things. A lot of my career I've been painting very detailed pet portraits with quite detailed and complicated backgrounds often as well. And of course I still love to work on this sort of thing. But what I'm really enjoying these days is having these little projects in between. A little painting that can be done in 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. That's such magic to me when I'm used to spending maybe 8 to 20 hours on something. So lots of fun experimenting with my colours and with my mark making here, trying out different effects and trying to get different marks from these big chunky pastel sticks. Different marks that nicely represent the different types of foliage that I can see. So I start going back over the whole image now, adding some more highlights, just bringing the tonal value up a little bit in certain places, adding a bit more vibrance here and there. But apart from that, I'm really just down to the final touches now. Really enjoyed this little piece. It came together much quicker than most of my paintings do. And it was really enjoyable to work with these lovely vibrant colours to try and capture a sunny bit of Spanish landscape. So I really hope that you've enjoyed the time-lapse version of this. I do have lots of real-time tutorials here on my YouTube channel as well, if you prefer. But the majority of my full real-time tutorials are over on my Patreon channel. I've got a full library of those which you can browse through the whole library on my website, emmacolbertart.com. You don't even have to sign up or anything. You can just browse what's available and see if there's any tutorials that really take your fancy. I try to include a really broad range of subject matter, and that's mostly because I'm really enjoying experimenting with a really broad range of subject matter. So big thanks to my patrons for their support. It's really their support over on Patreon that allows me to make all of these videos and allows me that extra time to be a bit experimental and to put that extra effort into making videos like this. So thanks very much for watching it here. Please do subscribe here on YouTube. And until next time, happy pasteling.